Welcome to Beyond Four Walls, Conversations on Affordable Housing. I'm David Dworkin, President and CEO of the National Housing Conference, the nation's oldest and broadest affordable housing coalition. Here, we'll dig deep into the pressing topics of housing in America. And while we do that, we'll also get to know some of the people who've devoted their lives to seeking tangible, impactful, and achievable solutions. In today's episode, we welcome industry stakeholders who participated in a webinar earlier this year about the state of Native American housing, sponsored by NeighborWorks America. What follows is a condensed version of this discussion, with the complete conversation available for viewing at nhc.org. We are happy to have a group of experts on Native and tribal issues in housing, so we can learn more today about an issue that, frankly, I'd love to see NHC more engaged in, and I'm glad we're able to get off to a start here, albeit probably late. We know that we can't really achieve truly equitable housing in the United States unless we make it available to everyone, particularly those who were truly here first. Many tribal lands are in extremely impoverished and rural areas. That's not a mistake, as we all know from American history. They lack basic infrastructure like phone service and broadband connections and plumbing and sewer systems, which is, frankly, a tragedy of American history. We have a substantial opportunity as a result and an obligation to make strong, meaningful investment in these communities. Programs like the Indian Housing Block Grant, the Indian Community Development Block Grant Program, the Section 184 Indian Home Loan Guarantee Program, and parts of the Community Reinvestment Act can help bridge some of the funding barriers that Native communities face. These programs, although as we can imagine are not nearly enough, takes the work of experts like those that we're going to hear from today to efficiently administer these funds and build stronger communities in and around tribal lands. Our panelists will speak today about how they utilize available federal funding and other resources to help bolster housing and community development activities. They will offer a survey of practices and programs that are geared towards meeting the challenges within Native communities and offer strategies on how best to serve Native people. Our discussion today will be moderated by Mellor Wiley, NeighborWorks America's new Director of Native Strategy and Partnerships.
Hi, my name is Mellor Wiley. Let me allow myself to introduce myself in my native language. Mellor Wiley Anishia Tachini Nishle, Sanaha Betling Bashishtin, Ashi Edashiche, Kia Ana Edashinella, Sagahotzande Nasha. I'd like to also acknowledge that I live and work here in Washington, D.C., in the land of the of what used to be the Anacostia and the Nokotchunk people, and who are now today also the tribal lands of the Pamunkey and Piscataway. And I'm very honored to be asked to moderate this panel today. Wanted to first start with the giving some background of Indian housing. I can't do that without speaking about the Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act, which was passed in 1996. NAHASDA created the Indian Housing Block Grant Program, which is probably the single largest investment for Indian housing to tribes. NAHASDA came about because tribes were working with HUD programs, and the HUD programs weren't necessarily a good fit. And so tribes were not necessarily fitting into those different regulations. So tribes came together, and some of those folks, even Jackie Peta, who's a panelist on this panel, they came together and created a commission. And out of that commission, they determined that tribes needed to have more local control over their housing funding dollars that were received from HUD. And what the block grant program allows is for a tribe to create its own Indian housing plan. It's really this essence of self-determination and self-governance, and actually allowing for local control based upon housing needs of each community. The reasons why this is important is also because there's such a huge diversity within Indian country. With all the 570 plus tribes across the United States, they all have different varied characteristics, different varied languages, and different geographies, and allowing them to put together their own Indian housing plan based on their housing needs in their community allowed for greater flexibility, and also allows for greater flexibility for leveraging the federal investment to Indian country. One thing that is a bit troublesome about the Indian Housing Block Plan is the funding levels. Since its inception in 1998, the funding has been flatlined at around $600 million. The Housing Needs Assessment Study determined in 2017 that Indian country needs 333,000 new units to eliminate the overcrowding in the American Indian Alaska Native population in tribal areas, and another 35,000 new units to replace units that were severely and physically inadequate. The total need of 68,000 new units are needed in Indian country. I can't overemphasize this enough that the tribes are diverse, and when working with tribes, you need to take into consideration that no two tribes are the same. We each all have different land areas. We have different governance systems, distinct cultures and languages. One thing to note is that while there are 618 legal and statistical areas identified by tribes as tribal areas, only 22% of American Indians and Alaska Natives live in those statistical areas. The other thing is tribes are diverse, and there's opportunities to create partnerships with state, county, and local nonprofit partners to meet the housing need. The other area that there's broad opportunity is strengthening our data, build outlets for collection of tribal data on homeownership, homelessness, and social services. And this is the great thing about having the Center for Indian Country Development, because it's meeting much of this need and providing data and research that can go back to inform tribes. The Center for Indian Country Development noted that just having a native CDFI in a community actually increases credit scores. And it's a way in which those people who have never had an opportunity to have loans can actually get a start out loan and start building their credit. So the fact of just even having a native CDFI in your tribal community is increasing the credit score, which moves on to mobilizing home buyers for home ownership. Also, there's also broad opportunities for the creation of coalitions. The environment is very fresh for people collaborating together. One thing that I wanted to know is some of the work that we're doing at NeighborWorks is impactful. I'm the director of Native Strategy at NeighborWorks America. It's the first time that they've had a person created this position. And we're executing a Native strategy within NeighborWorks that not only focuses on educating the great colleagues and people that I work with at NeighborWorks about how they can create partnerships with tribal communities, but also our vast networks. NeighborWorks has over 250 network organizations, and the work that they do on the ground can also be collaborations with tribal communities. But we also create national partnerships, and one of our partnerships is with the National American Indian Housing Council. We're funding them this year at $100,000 to create curriculum on low-income housing tax credit units and moving those into homeownership. This is a great way to look at creating homeownership opportunities in tribal communities and also creating lasting curriculum that we can learn from. And I'd like to go ahead and turn the time over to Brittany and to Jackie. Jackie's going to be up next.
Chish Meller, kus inyo katuasab, suka adi ayahat kagwantan yari yeshitak. In my own language, I introduced myself. My English name is Jackie Paytas. My Tlingit name is Kusin. I'm from the Raven Sakai clan from the Raven House in Daeshu, which is Haines, Alaska. And I too would like to follow Meller's footsteps and acknowledge that I live and work on Ak Kwan, which is the Ak people's land here in Zante Kahina, Juneau, Alaska. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about community development. And so in following Meller a little bit to just kind of re-emphasize some of the things that he touched on, which when you're working with tribes, respect for tribal sovereignty and self-determination is one of those core principles. Tribal sovereignty, and whatever the partnership is just just a fundamental principle of each tribe. And always to remember that each tribe is their own autonomous government. Their language, culture, and traditional practices are unique to each tribe, so don't assume that they're all the same. And it's really important, especially for entities who want to come in and research, to build trust before you research. And tribes are always looking for local solutions. So as a community development organization, regional housing authority, I need to remember those principles of respecting each tribal government as their own tribes, even though we live and work within the same region. And I want to share with you a little bit about how we do that. First of all, when I'm talking about these local solutions, and touching base on what Mellor said about things that have been really difficult for tribes, like loss of land and independence and loss of language by policies that didn't necessarily keep tribal independence and sovereignty at the forefront. So right now, the tribes are very committed to things like restoring and buying back land, or negotiating with the feds and other state governments protocols on consultation. So as I'm looking at that with the communities that I serve, it was really important for us to recognize each of those tribal governments as partners, but also recognize that there were things that the housing authority, as just a housing entity providing rental and home ownership opportunities, couldn't do just on their own. And so one of our core partners was we created Hayakawa Financial Corporation, our CDFI. And it was one of the first CDFIs in the nation that was certified by Treasury. And it has really helped our housing authority to rethink how we do our business. So the housing authority helps provide the construction, and the Hayakawa does a lot of the other lending and financial education kind of partnerships. But we have lots of other strategic partnerships in order to be able to meet the needs of all of our tribes. But how did we get there? How did we define what those really were? So what we did was we met with each of our tribes individually, and we surveyed their tribal citizens individually, and we developed these strategic surveys and analysis for each community. And we have one that I demonstrate here is the consolidated version. But every tribe got one of these surveys and this analysis, which is their priorities. And then we came together and said, okay, how do we achieve the things that we want? Now, these were housing related, and some of them were not so housing related, because some of them are foundational to other community development activities as well as housing. So they put together their priorities, and then we put together these 10-year guiding principles and a decision-making matrix. One of the things that was so important to us is making sure, in order to have good relationships, just like you would with any other partner, is that we were communicating well with each other and we understood each other's expectations. And this is just an example of our priorities. It needed to be supported by our community needs survey. We needed to make sure that we were talking about leverage and return on investment and a shared regional priority, and how are we going to deal with project readiness. So the housing authority builds the houses through our local crews, and the person who's participating in the program as being the potential homeowner or the future homeowner, they can actually participate in helping to build their own home through our sweat equity program. And then, of course, we look for down payment assistance. The Federal Reserve has been a great partner with that. BIA has been a great partner with that. And we look for other ways to leverage the cost. Other things that we did was we looked at the communities that we're in. And in Juneau, for example, the priority in 2019 through a large homeless effort of the coalition and survey of the community was the number one priority was a need for a youth homeless shelter. And it just wasn't happening. So what the Housing Authority did was we partnered with the city of Juneau. We rented this building from them, leased this building from them that they owned that was vacant for $1 a year. We renovated it. We got a lot of community partners, a lot of private and federal and state and local contributions to make it happen. But we're not the experts in providing youth services. So we partnered with the Zach Gordon Youth Center. They provide the day-to-day operations, and we provide the maintenance and the care of the building. Other things that we've done as a community partner is building the capacity at the local level. Our tribe said, at Clinton Heights Essential Council, our regional tribe, I sit as the first vice president, and under our strategic plan, we said it was critical for us to be able to make sure that our citizens had access to programs that help them become independent, financially independent, and independent on themselves. And so some of these are some of the programs that we partner with the tribe on, and the tribes in our communities. And then we realized that most of our people, once they get their homes, they don't maintain insurance. And that's a critical part to their asset building. So we offer classes on insurance. And now we're offering out classes on retirement. We also, because the housing authority is not just an Indian housing authority, we also are a nonprofit under the IRS, designated nonprofit, so we can access other funds. And so that we could be like the income tax preparation preparers that we have been, and we partner with the tribe to do that. We also just recently became a community, a CBDO, a community-based development organization. It wasn't something that we were looking to do, but when we realized that the ICDBG grants did not allow us to provide construction for residential construction unless we were this CBDO, well, we decided we have to apply for that, to be that. Now, I wanted to talk just a little bit about some of the challenges that we have met. Sometimes there were barriers that got in the way. And of course, we tried to seek solutions on how we could address those. For example, with the youth programs, HUD had requirements that said specifically how the board needed to be created. But as an Indian Housing Authority, our board had to be created a certain way that was created by the state under our state Alaska statutes, but also designated by our tribe. But HUD was a good partner and allowed us to make, allowed us to come up with a compromise solution on how we could create a youth advisory board that would actually serve to meet their expectations and allow us to proceed with that program. I think most of all, when you talk about community development, we remember that community participation is important, and organization, and of course, hard work. Many of us in the rural parts of Alaska and in all of Indian country, we wear many hats in order to be able to accomplish these activities.
Good afternoon. My name is Libby Sterling, and I am coming to you from the Center for Indian Country Development based at the Minneapolis Fed. The Center for Indian Country Development is a part of the Federal Reserve System, and our work is in supporting tribes in reaching their full economic potential through actionable research and community collaboration, with the goal of advancing solutions in Indian country that lead to tribal economic prosperity. In the homeownership space, we have done a lot of research as well as convening and collaboration with the goal of understanding the challenges and opportunities around tribal homeownership. So in thinking about this, in my 10 minutes this afternoon, I'd like to call out 3 challenges facing Indian country homeownership. The challenges associated with getting clear title for land, challenges in the lending markets, and then challenges with the federal programs that are designed to support homeownership in Indian country. A survey done several years ago, researchers found that 90% of renters in Indian country would like to be homeowners. So there is a goal of homeownership within Indian country as part of the broader sense of self-determination and sovereignty. But thinking about how to get to homeownership, coming back to the 3 challenges, the first I want to call out is the challenges associated with trust and title for land, particularly looking at the lands that are held in trust by the federal government and managed through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So on the lands that are in trust, the land in trust cannot be conveyed or sold without the consent of the federal government. And obtaining a mortgage on tribal trust land requires that the Bureau of Indian Affairs certifies a title status report. Now, the challenge is that when everything goes smoothly, this is simply an administrative process. But in 2019, a tribal leader told a Senate committee that they were looking at delays in the title status report of 1 year. So imagine the timing of trying to put a mortgage together, trying to lock down a rate, and then facing a 1 year gap in which there's no information or very little information in order to jump through the hoops. Now, the good news is that we've heard more recently from the BIA's land titles and records offices that title status reports are being moved through the process in as few as 4 days. But regardless, we see the differences that clearing title for trust land is much more time consuming than doing so for non-trust land or land outside of Indian country. So on research that was done in the 2010 to 2017 period, we found that overall Native American borrowers in tribal lands were paying 2% higher, 2 percentage points higher on interest rates on home loans than comparable borrowers outside of Indian country. There are several key drivers of this. One is the procedural differences. So looking at the leasehold mortgage versus the freehold mortgage, and the challenge in the collateralization of trust land to assure the lender that there is collateral associated with the loan. Because these loans are non-conforming and not easily resold to the government-sponsored enterprises like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, there's a weaker resale market for these mortgages, and therefore they simply cost more. Another piece is that there's a higher use of manufactured housing as a housing option within Indian country. Some of this results from the construction challenges associated with stick-built construction. Some of this is the distance. Some of this is rural areas. But with the greater share of manufactured housing, there's also a greater use of chattel loans, which again have a different resale market, as well as a high degree of concentration among the lenders who make chattel loans available. So there are a series of federal tools that are designed to work in Indian country, notably the Section 184, USDA Section 502, the VA's Native American Direct Loan Program. In terms of making some of these federal programs more effective, I do want to call out the critical role that is being played by Native community development financial institutions. And the next two speakers come from Native American community development financial institutions, or Native CDFIs. So one issue, of course, is when there are potential home buyers who aren't mortgage ready. Native CDFIs are providing the home buyer counseling and support that help clean up credit issues and help families become mortgage ready. Native CDFIs, unlike other CDFIs in traditional banking, provide the culturally informed financial services directly relevant to Native communities. I do want to call out the resource to support tribal homeownership, which is the Tribal Leaders Handbook on Homeownership that the Center for Indian Country Development released several years ago. We are grateful to the ongoing partnership with NeighborWorks America, as well as enterprise community partners and many tribal leaders who told their stories to put them together into the Tribal Leaders Handbook. But this is a way of understanding both the challenges and the best practices of moving into homeownership. So in terms of securing the clean title on land, as I said, the title status reports seem to be accelerating right now, and we're hopeful that that will continue. In terms of lending, here, Fern will talk about their work as the home buyer counseling, but Native CDFIs are doing more in order to have effective lending. And with that, the more effective use of federal programs.
Sagoli, and good afternoon. My name is Fern Ori. I am the Chief Programs Officer at the Owista Corporation. I wanted to just talk briefly about who we are. We're a national Native CDFI intermediary. We are located with headquarters in Longmont, Colorado, and we serve all of Indian country from Alaska to Hawaii, from Maine to the state of Washington. So we're serving Indian country as a whole. Our mission is to provide opportunities for Native people to develop financial assets and create wealth by assisting in the establishment of strong, permanent institutions and programs, contributing to economic independence and strengthening sovereignty for all Native communities. We provide training and technical assistance to all of our Native CDFI industry. This goes from everything to providing super customized training and certification programming, from everything from financial management to loan officer underwriting training to very customized executive level management sessions. And all of these services that we provide, we can do them on-site, place-based training. We offer them virtually, and then we also hold sessions throughout the year with our 18-month certification program. All of these are to support this establishment and sustainability of our native CDFI industry. Along with our TA and training, a big portion of what we do at Awista, since we are an intermediary, is our lending and capitalization. We have loan capital pools that we have provided throughout the years, two $10 million loan capital pools to our native CDFIs. One of the ones I like to highlight, we have a first in loan for native CDFIs that are emerging. It's always a challenge to find startup capital to do lending. So we have a first in loan product that has really been able to have capacity building for our CDFIs and having access to capital for their startup loan seed. Along with that, we have other loan products available to our CDFIs, directly lending to native CDFIs across Indian. Along with that, we also have a research and policy advocacy arm that we serve, working in partnership with a lot of our fabulous partners like the Native CDFI Network, the Center for Indian Country Development, working with tribes, working with a lot of national partners, and basically serving as a voice for Native communities to help inform policy, supporting Native community economic development. Some of our proven results of our 23 years of existence, we've revolved over $50 million in Native communities, and that is on the housing and business front. Over 180 units created of housing, over 2,600 small businesses have been financed, and then over 12,000 jobs have been created or retained. We have certified 205 trainers just in 2021 alone in our curriculum Building Native Communities. This is the trainer model that we've had. I want to say the number is over 40,000 tribal members or people across the United States have taken this training over the course of its duration. I wanted to talk a little about why housing. In 2018, we did a report. Things have changed significantly since then, of course, but with an expansion of existing loan products, basically our CDFI industry had said that they would add a mortgage loan product if the funding were available. As we know, some of that's the crux of these challenges with low cost long-term capital for housing being the issue. But over 40% of native CDFIs would want to add a mortgage loan product. We've seen a growth in this sector as native CDFIs have built the capacity of local borrowers. I wanted to touch on our strategic goal about housing. The goal around building an effective platform that will support native CDFI's ability to provide homeownership financing for native families. What we've done with that, as Mellor mentioned, is we have created a HUD housing counseling network. Currently, we have 11 certified native CDFIs as part of this HUD counseling network. We serve as the umbrella organization over this network. I wanted to just highlight our multi-pronged approach to supporting housing. We have long-term, low-cost capital that we are trying to always procure to offer to our native CDFI partners and building loan capital pools on the basis of this, supporting housing lending across Indian country. We have focused research with advisory groups composed of different native partners. We have key partnership building with government-sponsored entities like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, NeighborWorks, NIAC, etc. We're doing fundraising and grant making along these realms. We're doing cohorts and network building as an example of our HUD housing counseling network. We also have a mortgage lending network that I'll speak on briefly as well. And then, of course, addressing secondary market challenges. So a few of the secondary market challenges that we've seen across our sector as the native CDFI industry is noting that we need more flexible underwriting terms in underlying mortgage products, down payment requirements, credit scores, income requirements. Native CDFI loans are often considered non-conforming to the secondary market. So we're trying to address barriers and challenges around that. Also looking at when servicing organizations buy the loans. It's critical that the native CDFIs maintain the ability to service the loans and maintain those relationships with their clients. That's definitely been a key marker to the success in our borrowers across CDFI Indian country. We've also wanted to focus our energies in correcting some of these underlying challenges in partnering with these other agencies, and also looking to foster those relationships and build that capacity for native CDFIs to become direct seller and services for years to come. Recently, we've made recommendations to the FHFA board in order to increase homeownership opportunities. The elimination of any unnecessary MOU requirements with tribal nations is one element. Also creating a CDFI preferred product, allowing GSEs to offer affordable products to over-income borrowers on restricted tribal lands. Also to make equity-like investments to CDFIs, similarly to PRIs or program-related investments. And also to continue investing in native CDFI capacity building for secondary market access in order to take advantage of this emerging market. We have a native CDFI mortgage lending cohort. Currently, this program supports 13 native CDFIs in the mortgage lending space. This is growing, and we have more partners that are looking to be part of the cohort. We're offering direct technical assistance, sub-grant support, and cohort calls and training for peer sharing and networking and bringing in partners to provide opportunities. Along with that, we have part of that is the CLIMB program. The Homeownership Council of America has a program. It's Community Lending Initiatives in Mortgage Banking, aka CLIMB. This provides a growth path for CDFIs and HUD-approved housing counseling agencies through this program, which offers value proposition in product offerings and capital markets outlets for creating long-term sustainability. It aims to increase overall service to underserved communities on a national level, and also creates options for the less served consumers in their market areas. Right now, we have 11 native CDFIs that are part of the cohort. We have HUD housing counseling certified counselors that are on board of each CDFI, and really just trying to level up our housing market and housing capacity across Indian country in the native CDFI capital space. Some of the long-term benefits are the funding from HUD as part of our network has helped us be able to do some of the work we're doing with the network. And of course, providing network support and being that intermediary offering capital, technical assistance, and advocacy. I just want to touch briefly on some of the future opportunities, always working on policy and advocacy, of course, in Indian country, now more than ever around housing with our partners, including the Native CDFI Network, NIAC, HUD, also becoming 184 lenders and 502 lenders, expanding that opportunity for our industry. Some of the challenges that some of the previous speakers have talked about as well, those barriers and obstacles for lending on tribal lands in Indian country. Some of the insurance and bonding issues out there, basically not having access or reasonable premiums on insurance or bonding. Some of these bonding issues are for CDFIs trying to become 184 lenders. So we're really trying to do some advocacy work in those spaces, more working with tribes on MOUs and developing relationships there. And then also, we all know there's a lack of, I always say, appraisers and developers in Indian country, especially native appraisers and developers in Indian country. So I just wanted to underscore the whole reason we are doing this is to create more native homeowners and more native housing development across Indian.
Hi, my name is Pete Upton, and I am the Interim Executive Director for the Native CDFI Network, and I'm also the Executive Director for Native 360, which is located in Grand Island, Nebraska, and we serve South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, and northern Kansas currently. First of all, you have the challenges. I look for solutions, and then we look for ways that we can advocate for better policies to serve housing needs in Indian country. The national poverty rate for Native Americans was at 25.4%, while Black and African American poverty rate was at 20.8%. And among the Hispanics, the national poverty rate was 17.6%. So the poverty rate that Native Americans face is, high, the highest of all minorities. So as a Native American myself, I'm a member of the Ponca tribe of Nebraska, and we are a non-land-based tribe in Nebraska. So I have the benefit that I think I have my foot in both doors. So we each have unique challenges, and that was really the policy and advocacy that the Native CDFI Network does. The Native CDFI Network was formed in 2009 to unify Native CDFIs serving Native trust land communities, Native American Indians, Alaskan Natives, and Native and Hawaiians. The Native CDFI Network seeks to create opportunities to share our stories, identify our collective priorities, and strengthen our industry. In addition, the Native CDFI Network works to ensure Native peoples are represented in the national policy dialogue and innovative solutions created by CDFIs and are spread throughout our Native communities. We're the only national network of Native CDFIs with members operating in 27 states. Advocacy, the national advocacy voice for Native CDFI is driven by Native CDFI executives through an appointment of 9-member policy committee. Currently, we have 9 members of our board of directors, and they come from 9 different regions that we developed in 2020. And then from there, we appointed a 9-member policy committee. And the reason for that is we wanted to have a voice from every region that represents our Native CDFIs. What our leadership does for Indian country is we advocate, we bring the stories that we hear from the Jackie Pattas to Fern Ories, everyone within our network. We are the conduit, again, that brings the stories and the needs to our leaders. In 2019, when the CRA reforms were going, I was part of a group that did a tour in New Mexico with, at that time, Representative Howland, now with the Department of Interior. And we also meet quite regularly with some of our true heroes within the congressional ranks. Lisa Murkowski is really a strong supporter of all the work that the Native CDFI Network does, and the same thing with Representative Deb Haaland with the Department of Interior. We have to be able to communicate the stories to really move and shift the funding platform sometimes. As the Native CDFI Network, we gather annually, and from there, these are the policy priorities for 2022 that were established. But you can see when it comes, we have it broken down in what I would call buckets of focus. U.S. Treasury, the CDFI fund is naturally, we intend to increase our appropriations annually. This year, our goal was 30 to 50 million. They increased it to 21.5 million, which was a 30% increase over the previous 5 or 6 years. It had been stagnant at about 16 million. And that's not a lot of money to go around when there's 73 Native CDFIs. Another priority was the new market tax credit set aside for Native communities at 10% of the annual new market tax credit allocation. And several of these we've hit. There's been a group formed, a listening group. Big Water Consulting was contracted with Treasury to engage Native CDFI leaders, Native community leaders, in finding out a little bit more on how they can better serve Indian country when it comes to new market tax credits. And then also engaging Native CDFI working groups. We've achieved that, established an Office of Native American Programs within Treasury. And again, second one that we really focused on this year was housing, the HUD and the USDA programs, and to establish a 10% set aside of HUD Section 4 sole source funding for investment in tribal areas, and then to end redlining in the home loan origination, servicing, and loan loss mitigations with the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. And again, I'm getting, we got a couple more minutes here, but the thing that I want to really emphasize here is that the Native CDFI network, we have so many networks and partners out there. The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, I serve on their advisory board. Also, I serve on the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank Advisory Board. And what our goal this year was to get more Native voices at these tables so that they can really get a sense of what is needed in Indian country, and to have our voice, have Native issues being resolved, and at least having Native Americans in that process of finding some of these solutions that so many Native communities continue to face on housing and small business development. And really, the Native CDFI network, we look at a holistic approach of creating a community, because you have to have housing, you have to have jobs, you have to have small businesses, and then you have to have consumer lending as well. People have to have reliable transportation to get to work. You have to be able to work to pay for your home mortgage. So it's really a 360 holistic approach. What we're looking for is solutions. We know what the problems are, but how do we resolve those? And the only way that we're going to resolve them, and Robin Danner, a good friend of mine, she always says, we have to have the agencies come to us, listen so that they understand, and we can teach them what's going on in Indian country.
And I guess as we're almost about time, so I just want to go back to our panelists and ask this question. Given the outlook that we have in Indian country and the state of Indian housing, can you give us one word that youth would see as opportunities or a positive outcome that you see in Indian housing for the future? One word. And we'll start with Jackie.
One word: independence.
Independence. Great. Libby?
Partnership.
Fern?
Collaboration.
Pete?
Fern stole my word there, collaboration, and I guess networks.
And I'll include mine, self-determination.
Thank you to everyone who joined us this afternoon. If you're interested in joining NHC, you can go to our website at nhc.org and find out more information. And again, thank you to the panelists. This has been just an incredible, informative presentation. So everyone, have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Beyond Four Walls. You can visit the National Housing Conference at nhc.org. There you can learn more about affordable housing policies, affordability challenges throughout the nation on our Paycheck to Paycheck database, and explore membership in NHC for you or your organization. We appreciate your interest and look forward to working with you in the future. Until next time, I'm David Dworkin, NHC's President and CEO, wishing you a great day.